Welcome to The Vital Vagina, where we delve into brave and crucial conversations about the womb and feminine power. This podcast is not just for people with vaginas. We all come from the womb, and there is much for everyone to learn from this place of deep wisdom. I'm your host, Dr. Danielle Cornelius. I'm a chiropractor and holistic pelvic care provider. I've been working in the feminine healing realm for nearly a decade, and I am honored to bring this work and these stories to light. So today I'm talking with Samantha Zipporah. Samantha has been doing some really incredible educational work for many, many years, teaching people all about conscious contraception. She is such a wealth of knowledge when it comes to sex and birthing and bleeding and all of those juicy topics. I really loved having a conversation with her. I actually would love to get her back to get even more information from her. And I really highly encourage you to look her up and follow her, especially if you're interested in learning more about how to use contraception in the most natural way possible. Enjoy. Okay. Hello, Sam.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you for being part of the kickoff of my podcast, Vital Vagina.
Awesome. Vital Vagina.
I know. I'm pretty excited about
Mazel
it.
tov. Yes.
Thank you. Awesome. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Well, I am a radical medicine woman. I'm a witch.
Nice. Very good.
I identified primarily as a birth doula or a midwifery student for most of my 20s. And I've been self-employed for the last 5 years, consulting and educating people about fertility and sexuality throughout the entire womb continuum. And so this language I use, the womb continuum, is really deliberate in that a continuum has no beginning, no end. It's all connected. And so I speak with people about their yeast infections and their orgasms and their abortions and their births and everything in between, because the way that we relate to this part of our body affects our whole lives in such a profound way. So that's yeah, I have 2 online courses, which has been my main bread and butter this year. I have a course where I teach practitioners how to care for people during miscarriage and abortion in a holistic way that respects mind, body, and spirit. So it goes deep into anatomy and physiology of several different types of methods of pregnancy release, the spiritual rituals and different lineages available to support us with these processes, because they're not new. And they're also not just medical processes. And then nutrition and herbs. And so that's a big heavy hitter, and we could probably talk this whole half hour about that.
Yes.
But the other course that I just finished teaching online for the first time that was so much fun, and what we were speaking before about focusing our conversation today about, is conscious contraception.
Yes. Before we get into that, I want to say thank you for all of your work, because it's really important. And obviously, that work that you do is a calling, and it's probably not the easiest work in the world to do, but it's so important to really hold space for women, like you said, outside of just the medical model, because these, I like how you called it pregnancy release, and all the different ways that can happen is so intimate, and so it's so deep. And I see personally in my holistic pelvic care practice so many women who've been just kind of ignored by so many other practitioners. And then I get to see, or I have to see, what kind of happens with them afterwards. So the kind of work that you're doing and that you're teaching other practitioners to do is hugely important.
Thank you.
And you're welcome. You're welcome. And I'm really excited to not have to talk about that and go deeper into conscious contraception, because that's where we can actually avoid some of these deeper pains into the future.
Absolutely. Again, the continuum, it's all connected. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, well, tell me more about this conscious contraception. My mouth doesn't want to say it quite.
Yeah. So I've been tracking my bleeding for 20 years now, the whole time that I've been doing it. And I've been tracking my ovulation for 13 years now, which I just realized that, as soon as I figured out how to tell when I ovulated, I made a little book about it, which is available as a free download on my website. It's 13 years old. And it's like my ovulation awareness is ready for her bat mitzvah. She's like, she's an adult in her spiritual community.
That's so cute.
It's so adorable. And so my conscious contraception course was actually birthed at the same time that I made the ovulation awareness book free on my website. And I didn't make the connection until like several months after that had already happened and be like, oh my God, it's bat mitzvah time for my ovulation awareness.
Now you have a baby and a teenager.
I do. With the courses, you're right. I haven't put it that way. Conscious contraception, that terminology is kind of reminiscent of what Janine Parvati Baker, the free birth midwife. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her work. It's pretty spectacular. She has a book called Conscious Conception.
Okay.
And that terminology is pretty normalized and regular within home birth, natural birth, and free birth circles. And as I said before, I've studied to be a midwife and been a birth doula. So those are the circles I've been running in for a while. But there's not a lot of conversation, even in those circles, about conscious contraception.
Which is a different thing.
And it is absolutely pivotal and vital to have conscious contraception if you want to have a conscious conception.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, there's a lot there. And like I was saying earlier about what I offer in the miscarriage and abortion work that I do, conscious contraception is about honoring and integrating mind, body, and spirit with our wellness and with the way that we relate to our bodies and our beings and our ability to create life. And the fact that that is profoundly spiritual. Whether or not you consider yourself a spiritual person, we can't deny that our ability to bring forth more human life is a direct dial to the divine.
Absolutely.
So, I teach fertility awareness method in the 3 primary fertility signals, the symptothermal method, and help people become aware and educated around the biology, right? Our physical anatomy of fertility. And then I also teach people about the anatomy of our energy body, right? Because we're hyperdimensional beings.
We can.
So my general philosophy and understanding is that it's never going to be a healthy and whole experience if we are only addressing one dimension of ourselves.
Right.
And so I'm bringing our consciousness into our contraception practice. We are able to more fully embody and embrace who we are emotionally, mentally, psychospiritually, and not just limit ourselves to the physical act.
Yeah. So you're teaching basically people with periods how to keep track of their signs and signals of where they're at in their fertility cycle?
Absolutely. Yes.
Good. And then, so you and I were talking a little bit about how this topic tends to focus mostly just on women, and a lot of people feel like it's just this secret topic that we talk about amongst ourselves. However, men and males are very intimately connected to this process as well. And you, what? It's a revelation.
Sperm? You need sperm to get pregnant?
So why don't you tell me, and then you were talking to me a little bit about how the concept of bringing men into this conversation is so important for you as well. Can you tell me a little bit about your story with that?
Well, I mean, it goes back to when I first started teaching fertility awareness with my little zine, the little ovulation book that I made when I was 19 years old.
Oh, I still have that, by the way.
It's a fun one. I did a good job.
It's cute. You did.
I would advertise my classes as Slippery When Wet was the title of my class.
That's
and I tended to have a good 40 to 60% people with penises show up.
Nice.
I was in my early 20s, and I would pass out flyers, and people would be like, why do I need to come to this class? And I'd say, well, do you like to fuck women? I don't know if you need to bleep that out if we're saying that.
This is going to be my first explicit content one. I'm pretty really excited about
that. So yeah, involving men in the conversation is absolutely vital. And
it's yeah.
I mean, actually, I don't want to get too sidetracked, but there is an amazing thread that went viral recently on Twitter from a woman saying that 100% of unwanted pregnancies are due to irresponsible ejaculation.
Absolutely. I saw that. Yeah. I'll look for it too and link it into the show notes.
It's worth looking at. It's an important conversation.
Yes. It really is.
So yeah, having us as ovulators able to know when we ovulate and being able to communicate that to our partners who have sperm and have them be not just respectful and supportive, which would be, the end of rape culture, but also have them be co-creative and intentional and aware with the whole process, where we are not solely responsible for preventing conception with our minds and bodies, but they are also completely involved and invested. And that's what healthy sexuality should be, as this co-created mutual experience.
Absolutely. Hence the conscious part.
Exactly.
Of contraception.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the kind of reception that you get from males when it comes to this topic? Do you, what do you run into?
I've seen nothing but wonderful responses. Some people.
That's been my experience too.
Yes, they want to talk about vaginal fluids.
Yeah, they do. I had a man walk into one of my talks for pelvic floor talks one day, because it was in kind of an open area. And he was like, can I sit through this? Is it okay? Like, he was nervous. And I was like, yeah, do you care about the health of vaginas?
Yeah, the language I use often for classes now is for anybody with a uterus or people who love them.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's so great. Okay. So
I was just going to say that, whether or not you have a pussy, you came out of somebody who does. And
yes. Yeah, that's what I remind people too. Do I need to remind you that this area of life is what
you are made of menstrual blood. That's been one of my favorite. Yeah.
That's pretty good. I love that. Okay. So tell me, well, what are you doing these days with this work here? You talked a little bit about wanting to start to work more with younger people.
That work there. I'm in the middle of making a coloring book with one of my farmer friends, actually. And yeah, that's a little bit of a gear shift, but it's totally related in that it's about the cycle. and educating people about basic biology and the power to bring forth life. And so, yeah, it's one of my dreams and goals in the next few years to shift and to see about working more with youth and teaching them about the basic biology of the cycle and fertility in a way that is without stigma and without shame, and mirroring it with the seed and soil cycle. To be like, hey, this is without gender, this is without religion, this is basic biology, this is how things grow.
Yeah, just like a tree.
Which goes back to actually my personal story of when I first learned fertility awareness when I was 19 years old. I picked up a book at Aprovecho Research Institute. I was doing a sustainable living internship there, learning farming and forestry and alternative technology practices. And I picked up Katie Singer's book, The Garden of Fertility, from the shelf there. And so my first education around ovulation and fertility awareness as a method of contraception occurred within this context of studying permaculture and ecology. And so I also use the word body ecology all the time in my work, and to understand that we are ecosystems. We're microcosms of the macrocosm of creation, and our bodies are the earth. It's not a metaphor. It's a literal reality.
Right.
And understanding the cycles of nature and observing them and respecting them and moving with them instead of against them is the way to be healthy.
Right. It's like deceptively simple.
Yes, but it comes back to like, how is it that the vast majority of people in our generation are not ovulating? They don't value the body ecology, like fertility of ovulation, unless we're making a baby.
I know. Yeah. I was talking to Shara Rocks actually as one of my first interviews for this podcast as well. And she did something really similar. Like she came up with this, she was really focused on, and both of us were like, how to use this fertility cycle for creative energy, not just for like,
Absolutely.
oh, I want to have a baby now. And so she did the same thing. She tracked her cycle for a year, and she also took a picture of the same tree for a year and just kind of compared all of that. And like it really makes you deeply, deeply aware of how connected that we are, and we take for granted.
I love that story. Another one of my little phrases that I use in teaching a lot about how profound the cycle energetics are and what we need in terms of nourishment and rest when we are bleeding actively is the analogy of like going out to an apple tree in the middle of winter and yelling at it because it's not fruiting.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like that's just so asinine.
Like, it's true. And we like, even men, like people who don't bleed still also need rest. And I'm always reminding everyone like this, we live in a cycle. Like that's part of it. It's okay to like stop and rest. In fact, you might get more energy later if you do that. So it's like people are afraid to live in a cyclical way versus this linear just pushing forward. And I see that in all genders.
Like one of the mainstays of patriarchal oppression is the linear and the stasis being valued and the cyclical being denied and suppressed.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's holding on in a lot of people. The other thing we talked about, which I don't think very many people really consider, but the how becoming aware of cycles can be actually an erotic journey.
Again, with the fluids and the fact that I was advertising my fertility awareness classes as slippery when wet. I mean, eros and eroticism, in this context, it is explicitly sexual when you're talking about sperm and fertile fluids and things like that. But it's just life force in terms of the etymology. And like being able to relate to our ability to bring life into this world, whether through actual pregnancy or through like psycho-spiritual and vital force and connection to our essence, that we are playing with that when we are having sex and not making babies, and we're using our actual consciousness. We're using our emotional, psycho-spiritual intelligence to create what we desire. And so for that, I have this tool called the Sacred Yes, which I use both in contraception and abortion a lot, actually, in that these acts of both contraception and abortion are so frequently based in fear and in the energy of no.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that no doesn't exist in a vacuum. It is balanced by what you do want, what you do desire. What is your sacred yes? What is it that you are wanting to conceive and gestate and birth and become one with in this dimension? And everybody who is engaged in some sort of contraceptive practice and everybody who chooses abortion has a sacred yes. And so finding that sacred yes and illuminating it and owning it, speaking about it with our partners, dedicating our orgasms to it, dedicating the physical acts that we have to take to avoid creating a human life with pregnancy, dedicating that energy to what is our sacred yes. And that it could be grad school, it could be all sorts of, crazy things. It could just be pleasure. Our sacred yes can be pleasure. So yes, conscious contraception as an erotic act, as a way of dancing with Eros.
I love it. It's also an act of resistance.
I mean, yes, avoiding pregnancy and having wonderful, intimate sex and orgasms without using inanimate objects or pharmaceuticals or being a consumer is a total act of socioeconomic revolution and political resistance.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. Oh, that's amazing. Woo! I really like leaving it on that note of the sacred yes. I want people to let that
we
kind
covered
of
a lot of ground, and I concur that of all of the ways that I took that the sacred yes is probably the most important and easy takeaway for everybody if they are especially avoiding pregnancy, if you're engaged in contraception, even if you're not ready to give up your pill or your IUD or things like that and engage in fertility awareness, like at least do the emotional work of claiming that sacred yes. Making decisions based on love instead of fear. It's a big deal.
Absolutely. Please. Where can people find more about you? I know you're doing a bit of a sale right now on your miscarriage and abortion work.
My website is my name, which is Samantha Zipporah, ZIPPORAH.com. And there they can find out about my courses. I also offer individual counseling sessions, and that ovulation awareness book that I made when I was 19 is a free download on my homepage. If anybody wants to see that, I made some pretty cute drawings for it as well. It's 13 years old now. So yeah, my website, I am on Instagram as well at Samantha Zipporah, and the Book of Faces. And I hope that, thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you and your audience. And I hope everybody claims their sacred yes.
Yes, sacred yes. Thank you so much for being here and for being such a wealth of knowledge and for being so dedicated to this work.
My pleasure. The feeling is mutual. I'm so glad we're still connected.
Yes, me too. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. You can find show notes at vitalvagina.com. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and share with your friends. We'll be back next week with another episode.